Welcome in, folks, for another episode of What's Bruin, brought to you by our good friends over at Ice Shaker. Check them out at iceshaker.com, the best shaker bottle out there. I kid you not. Kitchen grade stainless steel, all the fun things that you want to have about it. Trust me, check it out. I am joined, as I am every week, by my co-host, Dom Tiano. Dom, how are you today?
Doing well, Chris. How about you?
Doing all right. Seems like the weekend has flown by, but it gives us a lot to talk about. And Matrix is already in the comments saying this is going to be a spicy pod. We got a lot to get to. A lot came out of Don Sweeney's press conference earlier. I'm sure you saw it. Hopefully, everybody watching saw it. I figured that's where we would start off, unless you had somewhere else that you wanted to kick off this episode with.
No, you run the show. You tell me where to go.
Well, did you want to start with your major takeaways from the press conference before we dive into some of the clips that we have?
Well, my major takeaways is that a lot of fans went out and bought Metamucil today because they think everything was full of shit and Don Sweeney actually didn't say anything. But when you break it all down, he had lots to say.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, he hit on a lot of points. I know it was only a 15-minute press conference, but he was asked about quite a bit regarding the trade deadline. He touched on that a couple times, and then of course the big news, the Charlie McAvoy injury. I figured that's probably a good place for us to start because that's the biggest news.
We have clips of the press conference. Why not just go in order?
Off the top of my head, I don't remember what order they all come in. So the first one I have queued up, though, is the one on Charlie McAvoy. This one's a little over a minute and a half. And we already got Tim jumping in from Twitter. He made a couple comments earlier today. So shout out, Tim. Glad to have you on here. We'll start off with this clip here from Don Sweeney talking about the injury to Charlie McAvoy that he suffered during the Four Nations face.
As far as Charlie, very happy to report that Charlie's doing better out of the hospital, as you saw, in his attendance to the Four Nations, and doing better at home with Kylie and Reese. And again, no timeline as regards to his surgery and his shoulder, but again, doing much better, and we're very grateful and appreciative to Dr. Asmussen and medical staff that took care of Charlie.
Is there a possibility of surgery on the shoulder from the original injury?
No, a follow-up surgery, it's unlikely, but I'll let Pete. Yeah.
The original injury.
No, I don't think so at this time, but again, we'll let the healing, take place and allow the infection stuff to make sure it's gone, and it'll be reevaluated. It's unlikely the nature of that injury, but again, I'll let Dr. Asmussen and Charlie determine course of action and the timeline necessary for him to fully heal.
Was the organization happy with the care that Charlie got after the injury in Montreal?
Again, the care that Charlie received here is what's most important from a standpoint of where his health is at now, and that's all that really matters. Dr. Asmussen's team, as I stated, did a great job.
I feel like it was preventable.
Yeah, again, I'm not going to talk and get into any more details in terms of Charlie. I gave you the update in terms of how Charlie's doing, and that's what we're grateful for.
Yeah, missing both of those defensemen, does that change your strategy, your game plan, how you view the trade deadline? What's going to happen?
All right, Dom. Thoughts on the McAvoy injury and what he kind of gave you on those answers there?
Well, if anybody thought he was going to come out and badmouth the Minnesota Wild physicians, you got another thing coming, because that's not going to happen. First and foremost, I don't know why anybody would expect him to. That's between the Bruins and the league, and let the league take care of things there. He's not going to come out and publicly say anything so that he gets fined and Jeremy Jacobs gets fined. Not to mention you know, um, to say anything publicly would be suggesting that there was malpractice of sorts there, and he's not going to put himself in that legal position. So um, that's my first take. My second take, obviously, they don't have a timeline. I'm more concerned now with Hampus Lindholm being out for the season. Basically said it's highly unlikely he'll play this season.
Yeah, I
That
have.
opens up a whole other can of worms as to what they can do with money, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think the Charlie McAvoy injury, first of all, from the fact that he shut down 2 questions about the injury itself, how it was originally treated, I think he's pissed. But to your point, he's not going to come out and make anything about that public. He'll go to the league, he'll make the internal phone calls, he'll deliver it all behind the scenes. He will handle it in a professional manner. I mean, this is the guy that went out and complimented the officials who were doing a horrible job in the playoffs. So he knows how to take these problems up with the right people. So if there really was some sort of malpractice against Charlie McAvoy and how things were treated and handled, he'll know, he'll have it handled. And we'll find out in the future when something happens. So as Bear Force puts it, Sweeney would be a great politician. He can talk all day and not really say anything. I think he said a lot though. He talked about there probably isn't another surgery coming up on the shoulder, but there is no timeline, which means they're not rushing anything. You mentioned the Hampus Lindholm injury as well. He's now probably done for the season. I have the clip on that one as well.
Hold on. I want to say something here.
But go ahead.
People are upset at the press conference because Don Sweeney didn't say what they want to hear. Don Sweeney isn't going to come out and say, we're selling this guy, we're selling that guy. Very professional about it. But the anger or the angst from fans comes because they didn't hear what they wanted to hear.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. And I saw some rage, I guess you could call it, towards the Hampus Lindholm comments that were coming out. I'm going to play the clip, and then we can get into kind of that aspect of it here. Anything before I play the clip?
Nope.
Hampus, unfortunately, is unlikely to return for the rest of the season. As everybody knows, he had a significant knee injury. He fractured his patella, had surgery. There was no real definitive timeline. I think we were pretty open about that and really didn't want to peg a timeline on it because of the complexity of the injury. He's going to have a follow-up next week to remove a little bit of the hardware because it created some irritation as he was going through the rehab. Again, the healing process has gone long and gone well. He'll have no setbacks moving forward. That being said, it's going to take a little more time for him to heal naturally, and we just don't want to put a timeline on when he'll be back to 100%. So I think it's more constructive to allow him to not continue to push the way he had been pushing and to let it heal a little more naturally.
Alrighty. First of all, I think that's the first time we've gotten actual confirmation as to what the injury was. And it sounds to me like he had his surgery, he was progressing along, felt some discomfort. They knew that they figured out they were going to have to go back in and, as he said, remove some hardware. He's probably got some metal in his knee at this point, and it's discomfort. So they're going to go in, pull it out, and just let his knee continue. Now that McAvoy's out, there's no need to push him along and try to bring him back for a playoff push. So at this point, he can take his sweet time.
Yeah, and they should. Let him heal 100%. What this does now is, with him out the rest of the season, they don't have to worry about reactivating them and the cap. It just opens up a whole lot of money for them to call up Fabian Lysell, Georgi Merkulov, John Farinacci, Michael DiPietro, Brandon Bussey, any one of these kids to give them a look without having to stress and worry about the cap.
Yeah, and it also gives them room to go out, and if there is a move available at the trade deadline, where another team needs to dump a roster player or they need to dump some salary or something like that, they can be aggressive in that manner. We'll talk a little bit more about that after, but I don't see them being aggressive.
I don't think they should do that.
I'm just saying it leaves the door open.
No.
If someone wants to throw them a draft pick,
Not with Lindholm. Use that money. I've talked about it 1,000 times now. You need answers on Fabian Lysell. You need answers on Georgi Merkulov. You need answers on one of the goaltenders if you're going to try and move Korpisalo in the offseason. You need that space for those guys. If that kind of deal comes up where he needs to worry about it, about cap space to take on a salary dump to make a deal, then you LTIR Charlie McAvoy.
Yeah, that's. I think that's going to be the option. It is the two of them have that option of being LTIR. Lindholm is already there. McAvoy will probably just continue to see week to week until they get past the trade deadline. That's what I'm referring to. I don't think they would do it solely without putting McAvoy on LTIR. I just don't think they're going to push McAvoy to come back either. They're going to let him take his time, and if he ends up, sitting on the shelf for the rest of the year, then fine, they'll deal with it, basically. Which, we were even saying at the beginning of the year, if this team needed to be healthy and there were key defensive players on defense, McAvoy and Lindholm, without them, this team they have no shot at the playoffs at this point, realistically. Mathematically, they're still in it, but it's just going to be a matter of time. And then he was asked, Kevin says, let the kids play and sell. I agree. I don't think it's going to be a hard sell. In fact, I have a clip that I'm pulling up right now for the trade deadline because he was asked about their approach towards the deadline. Dom, anything before we play this next clip?
Nope.
Well, I think historically we've been pretty aggressive. When our team's been in a position, I think we'll take a much more cautious approach as we approach the deadline. That being said, if there are opportunities to improve our team now and certainly moving forward, whether that's positional shifts or other teams are trying to identify that we may have a strength at, we will look at all opportunities to improve our team now, but more importantly, even moving forward.
Meaning trading away players
Yeah.
and trading in players potentially?
Yeah, it's just stuff that happens during this period of time, and it may plant a seed for the draft and beyond. But there'll be a lot of conversations with people asking, what possible moves we can make. We're just going to take a little more cautious approach in terms of as being aggressive as we have been in the past.
Brad has said that he'd like to be a Bruin for life. Do you want that?
That's always been my ultimate goal. Well, I think.
All right. And then he adds in the last little question there about Brad Marchand after wanting to keep Brad Marchand here for the rest of his career. He was asked about the trade deadline again later in the press conference. I have that clip as well. Do you want me to play that one too? Or?
Yeah. Cover it all at once.
Again, I don't think we're going to be overly aggressive. That being said, if a player, moving forward with us presents, from a cap perspective this year and next year, then, we're going to look at that. Injuries have already taken its toll in terms of being an LTI for a period of time. We float in and out at this time, but, you just have to wait. Obviously Charlie's out as well. So you have to have the bodies and the flexibility, but, we're not going to be overly aggressive in terms of giving up, as Fluto referenced, draft picks to acquire people in that nature. But, I can't sit here today and say that I won't do something that will improve our club now and moving forward.
All right. Now, you mentioned he's not mentioning names. He's not telling people what they want to hear. Now that we've all heard it, I'll let you go.
Okay, he's basically saying what I wrote about a month ago on what he should do. Sell the UFAs. You only trade Marchand if Marchand requests it. Uh, he said in the press conference that when it comes to other UFAs, he doesn't see anything happening this season with them.
Dom, you got ahead of me. I have that clip too.
Okay, then play it.
We've been in discussions. I think I have a pretty clear idea as to where most of those players sit. We have a timeline for some that's different than others as it relates to UFA and RFA, and we'll address those. As I just mentioned, we'll address the Brad one. So everybody's a little bit in the same boat at this point in time, that it's unlikely that we'll move forward with things other than maybe Brad's, but you never know, because obviously it takes one phone call and things change around.
There we go. Go ahead.
Like he said, unlikely we're moving forward with the UFAs except maybe Brad. In other words, what he's saying is there's no contract coming to Justin Brazeau. There's no contract coming for Trent Frederick, and you can list any of the other UFAs. It could change with one phone call, but he doesn't see it happening. So what do you have to do? You have to trade those assets.
Yeah, the ones that you can get pieces for. And I think I do think that line of it could all change with one phone call was thrown in there for a specific reason. It sounds to me like he's made his offer to certain players, and they may not move a guy like Cole Koepke, for instance. Keep the depth in the bottom six, fine. If they don't move on from him, maybe he gets a call in 2 months from his agent, and they just say, "Hey, we'll take that deal. The market doesn't look like what we thought it might look like, so we'll re-up for that 2-year, $850,000 contract that you offered us 2 months ago." That's what he means by things could change. He's not coming off his number, but the players might.
Yeah, it's exactly like I said. I wrote about it over a month ago. That's what this team needs to do. You don't need to. Guys like Charlie Coyle, Jonas Corpusalo, they're more of an off-season trade, although you might find some interest in Charlie Coyle at this point. But to say that Don Sweeney had nothing to say today, I mean, when you listen very closely, there was plenty to say.
Oh yeah, he said a lot, and he was asked about the young kids in Providence as well. I have that one right here.
Yeah, if they're playing well, they're going through a good playoff positioning stretch down there. Both those two players are contributing nightly basis and working through. They've both played up here. If their game merits it, they're going to get a good opportunity to play. Yeah.
Which is something that we have talked about on both this show and Monday's prospect show about how, if they're playing well, they get the call. Now, I want to shout out Gail. Gail Triani on Twitter pointed this out right after the press conference as well, once he made this comment. I have her tweet, so I'm going to read it from her because she said it perfect. One thing about this is Mujanel, McQuaid, and others feed Sweeney updates. It's not just him saying no. So if you see Fabian Lysell not getting a call up, it's not entirely on Don Sweeney. As she pointed out, other people are part of the decision-making process.
I've been saying it for years. It's nothing new. I want to attack this comment.
Sure.
By Michael. Michael, there are reasons why certain players are called up. For all we know, and there have been discussions with Anaheim, and Don Sweeney even admitted today that there are a lot of discussions going on right now. Tufte could be a type of player that Anaheim could use. He's a big body to go with their skilled kids up front um, that could help them out. And maybe they wanted to look at him. You might not get more than a 7th-round draft pick for him, but that's fine. It's an asset for an asset. Lysell isn't coming in to fill in for a Cole Koepke or a Mark Kostelic. Neither is Merkulov. It's all situational. They will get their chance between now and the end of the season. I absolutely believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, if you look at just who this team has for unrestricted free agents, if you deal off even 2 of them, you're going to see the kids come up and get some time. You mean to tell me that Morgan Geekie can't get bumped down to the 3rd or 4th line for a game so you can see what a Georgi Merkulov can do in a top 6 role? You absolutely can make that move, but you're not going to do that if you are trying to showcase Tufte for a team like Anaheim. Or
Georgi Merkulov should be called up when Trent Frederick is traded and put on the left wing with Matt Patra. When was Georgi Merkulov at his best in Providence?
when he was next to Matt Patra.
Matt Patra was sent down and Merkulov played on his left wing. Look, I know there are a lot of Justin Brazeau fans out there, and I've watched the kid since 2011 back in junior with the North Bay Battalion. I give the kid a lot of credit for accomplishing what he's accomplished, the work and everything he put to get in there. But I don't see what everybody else sees in him. I really don't. I see a guy who gets knocked on his ass more than any other player on the team. I pointed it out to people. Just watch how many times he gets knocked over. You're one of them, Chris.
And I mentioned it last year in the playoffs. I wasn't as big a fan of other people.
If Court is watching or in the chat, I told Court to watch it one night, and he's like, basically, holy shit, you're right. Okay, I can count 3 times in the second period alone last night where Matt Patra put pucks on or towards the net for Justin Brazeau, and he couldn't get a stick on it.
Yeah.
3 in a period. I'm sorry, folks. I know a lot of people like him and a lot of respect for what he's done, but I don't see what you see.
Bear Force is asking, do you think he gets traded?
I hope so.
The issue with Justin Brazeau is other people are going to see those same flaws. And so his trade value is not going to be very high. Now,
I don't care.
I know. I'm saying I'm with you. If you get a 7th or 8th round or 7th or 6th round pick, you take it. It's an asset for an asset, as you said. And we'll talk about 7th round picks a lot more tomorrow. But I'd rather have the pick than have a player for 2 months that we know isn't going to help us going forward. So the pick is a roll of the dice. It's better than nothing. I will take that, but you're not going to get a mid-round pick. And, you're not going to be packaging Justin Brazeau with somebody else to try and improve a package going the other direction. He's not that kind of player. It's, Edmonton taking a flyer on next year's 2nd or 6th round draft pick that they don't have to give up for a year, saying maybe he'll add some depth for us in a physical role in our bottom 6.
Yeah, like I said, do you think Matty Patra felt any frustration yesterday watching things die on his stick or not even get an attempt out of it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, we've talked about even Trent Frederick plays better on Matthew Poitras' left side.
Mm-hmm.
But, you got to have the feet to keep up with him. Frederick has the ceiling to do that. It's just he's not doing it for whatever reason. And hopefully you can get someone to bite on what they think he is. You know, that's a conversation that we've had before. And, you know, I know you pointed this out on Twitter. I'm going to pull this up here. Our friends over at Puckpedia posted his draft card.
No, that's not his draft card.
Or,
That's
sorry, his scouting card. His scouting card. If you want to review your thoughts on the card here.
I think it's all way out of whack. All of it. Every one of those scores are way out of whack.
I couldn't agree more. I mean,
and you know, I put a lot of faith in Pro Hockey, which does these for Puckpedia, but they are way out of whack there. Way out of whack. How is his penalty, or how is his power play get a higher score than his penalty killing?
He's not on either unit.
Well, he penalty kills, but I don't understand.
I meant on the power play. He's not on the power play nearly as much.
I just don't understand how his power play score is higher than his penalty kill score.
And how are physicality and his compete and consistency both a 90 rating? It's like they haven't watched the player this year.
That one is way off. Way off.
Disconnected from reality. I like that one.
Hi, Defumi.
And Kendall says it'd be nice if Frederick heated up a little to get his value up. It would be nice to see that, but
it's too late now.
I was going to say, it just doesn't seem like, you know, trade deadline's less than 2 weeks away at this point.
Yeah,
that's the other thing. Go ahead.
For him to heat up now, he'll have to go on some kind of Wayne Gretzky run to increase his trade value.
You know, Ovechkin run.
Too late now.
Yeah, and a lot of people who are complaining about Don Sweeney not making a move. Well, guess what? Now is the time for him to start making moves, because now the trade deadline is coming. They have a much better idea of what prices are going to be. You have other teams who have injuries now. You know, Florida, for instance, they were in on a guy like Trent Frederick a while back. Maybe they circle back if they think they'll be without Mac Tkachuk for a little while. Not to say Trent Frederick's going to replace him, but if you think Frederick can bring some sort of type of agitative role to your lineup and you shift other people in and put him in a third line role, okay, he's worth a mid-round flyer as a draft pick in a trade. And if you're Boston, you should have absolutely no problem taking that deal. Two teams got to want it to happen, though. So
yeah.
Michael's asking, with Hampus Lindholm out for the remainder of the season, we did touch on it a little bit. How could that be leveraged by Sweeney at the draft? I don't think it would really help him too much at the draft, other than, you know, having a little bit of room with McAvoy added to the LTIR to maybe get a pick.
They don't want to use off-season LTIR. They don't. It's just a cap killer.
It also doesn't make sense. Wait till the season.
Well, it does. It does in certain situations, but
I meant in this one, it doesn't.
You already got a cap that's increasing substantially. Plus, you can go over the cap by 10% anyway. I don't see how it affects anything he could do at the draft.
Yeah. Let's say. Way off, but that's what you want other teams to see. Yeah, I mean, if you're Don Sweeney, take that card and email it out to 31 other general managers and say, this guy's available.
You know what? I'm calling it up right now on the other computer. I like to use bench rates, and I'm calling Trent Frederick up right now.
I was gonna say
Trent Frederick right now, I'll tell you what, Trent Frederick for the year is playing at a lower level than Georgi Merkulov is now, according to bench rates. Those of you that don't know bench rates, go to benchrates.com. It's created by a former hockey player. He's created an algorithm that computes players' value and contribution to their team in a dollar value, like the salary cap. And Trent Frederick right now is playing at a $235,000 level.
that's just brutal.
Georgi Merkulov is playing at over almost $600,000.
Yeah, that just tells you right there how bad Frederick has been. Now, I mean, Frederick screams conditional pick in a trade, if you're asking me. Someone that they're trying to make a push for the playoffs or something like that. They'll give you a third that can upgrade to a second, or a second that upgrades to a first 2 years down the road, something like that. That's what he comes off to me as, based on his performance or playoff performance, that kind of thing. Bear Force chimes in and says, I could see Beecher going to the Oilers. They are looking for a fourth line center with speed. Beecher's an interesting case because he's an RFA, and so he wasn't specifically mentioned by Sweeney in any indirect or direct way. Do you think Beecher's someone they look to move off from?
Well, he's not a player you actively shop because they're a dime a dozen. If somebody comes calling, yeah, he's going to listen. But
he's also a restricted free agent with arbitration rights. So,
right, it doesn't matter, Chris. They're a dime a dozen.
Yeah, he's not going to give you a ton in return, but if someone's willing to overpay you for him,
who is John Beecher, Chris?
I know.
Somebody might overpay you for Trent Frederick. Nobody's going to overpay you for John Beecher because everybody knows what he is. If you sent an email to 31 GMs and said, I'm willing to trade John Beecher, how many phone calls do you think you're going to get back?
You probably get an email back going, what are you looking for him?
Yeah, I bet you 30 of 31 GMs wouldn't even respond. Yeah. One might respond and say, why?
Fair.
They're a dime a dozen. If Sweeney wants a third round pick for Beecher, they can find a John Beecher somewhere else for a 7th round pick.
Yeah, I don't see him getting moved just because of, like you said, the supply is too high. Good question here from Michael, though. How important is it for Providence players to get an AHL playoff run under the belt? And is that a reason call-ups may not happen? Merkulov and Lysell, for instance.
It's very important for them to get. Look, I once had a GM tell me that he does not want to acquire players that come from a losing atmosphere. So you want players that come from a winning atmosphere. Look, I just did an article on Mason Millman on why the Bruins should sign him. He's on an AHL contract and probably Providence's best defenseman this season. The guy knows how to win. You know why? He played on teams that won 7 consecutive championships from league to league. Every time he went up a level, they won a championship. 7 consecutive years. He knows how to win. Those are the type of players you want. So you want Merkulov, you want Lysell in a Providence playoff run if Boston is not going to have one. The thing is as long as they're on the Providence roster come trade deadline, which is why we'll see, get ready for this, don't flip out, Matty Patra sent down to Providence on trade deadline day. It's so that they can be on the Providence roster and then called up and then be eligible for the Providence playoffs.
Yeah, I think you'll see that with Matthew Poitras. And I don't think anybody else is really fitting that type of option, who will at least get called up in the next 2 weeks. I don't see them making any other roster moves, trades withstanding. Like there's no point in calling Georgi Merkulov up for the next 2 weeks unless you have an injury. And then paper transaction him down for the playoffs, as you were talking about with Poitras. I think those guys are going to see their run after the trade deadline.
Yeah, and don't forget, in 2 weeks, the NCAA season ends for a lot of players
Mm-hmm.
as they get into the national tournament. So, you can bring players up and replace them by signing your prospects if you want to. Like Ty Gallagher, I don't know that Colorado College is going to make it. It doesn't look like it. Jake Schmaltz, if you want to give him a contract. I mean, Andre Gasol at BC, top-ranked team in the country. He's going to be playing for a while. But these guys may want to turn pro, and you can replace the guys you're calling up to Providence with them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Now, what does their eligibility look like for AHL playoffs based on when they join the team?
They can go play in the playoffs. They're just signed.
Perfect. No, that I wasn't sure. I thought that was the case, but and that would be awesome for a guy like Ty Gallagher, as you mentioned.
Don't forget Charlie McAvoy did it and had to get called up to Boston because of injuries in Boston.
Yeah, true. Let's see. Matrix says, I would not be one bit surprised to see Charlie Coyle get traded. Would be good third line center for a contending team. Bruins would also get rid of that $5.25 million cap hit for next season.
I think it's an off-season move. I really do.
Yeah, you're not trading Charlie Coyle right now for cap space for next year. One, you have plenty of it already. And two, you don't have center depth right now until you know what you're doing at that position.
Well, not only that, it's like you're limited to who you can trade Charlie Coyle to now because of cap space. You're either going to have to retain. You don't want to retain for this year and next year. And again, you're going to be limited to who you can trade him to. Better off in the summer when teams have cap space and more teams can afford them.
Yeah, that's the time. And he'll be a rental for next season for teams that want to have that kind of depth third line center. Third line center isn't, unless you have an elite third line center who's young and you want to try and sign him for a 4 or 5 year contract, you don't want to have more than maybe a year or two invested in your third line center if you're trying to compete for a cup and you're going for Charlie Coyle type as that player. You don't want to have multiple years locked up. But yeah, I agree. Off-season move there. Let's see. Bruin Joe says RFAs like Lohrei and Beecher are going nowhere, but Geeky as value, maybe a good trade chip. Yeah, Lohrei's not going anywhere. I think you're going to see him get a ton of minutes, especially with Lindholm and McAvoy out now. I think he's going to see a lot of power play time. He's going to see a lot of top 4 minutes. And
you know what? All bonuses to his development.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Not a bad thing. I think you're going to see that for Callahan too. I think Michael Callahan could play himself into a contract for next season right now.
Sorry, who?
Michael Callahan. He has to earn the contract, but he's going to be given
Yeah.
an opportunity to do it.
Yeah. Group 6 UFA. And remember, next game he plays, which is Tuesday against Toronto, correct?
That should be the next one.
Yeah. After that, he requires waivers.
I mean, are you going to give the time to Jordan Osterley, who's 32, or are you going to give the time to Michael Callahan? I think you could actually receive phone calls on Jordan Osterley.
You might.
Not a lot, but
question there about Freddie. Is it worth trading him? Well, yeah, because judging by Sweeney's comments, he's not signing him unless something changes with a phone call between now and the end of the season. So why would I not trade him and get something for him rather than let him walk at the end of the season for nothing?
yeah.
We've seen this team do it with Jake DeBrusk, Louis Eriksson, Torrey Krug, Zdeno Chara, where we just let them walk for nothing.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like he's aching to re-sign here. I think he wants to, but he's going to be open to hitting the market and finding another predicament. Bear Force has a good question here. Which teams do you think would be interested in Trent Frederick? I mean,
New Jersey, Edmonton, Florida, Colorado, and St. Louis for the right price. St. Louis is not going to get into a bidding war with every other team because they're pretty sure they can sign him in the summertime if he gets to free agency.
and I wouldn't be surprised if Tampa Bay came sniffing around.
I could see that.
Winnipeg, I think, was another one I heard that might have some interest as well. That would be an interesting call to handle, to say the least. So let's see. Michael asks, with cap going up, Lindholm will Lindholm potentially be seen and fit as a third line center in Coyle's absence?
No. Second line center. You know, who I think will be fighting for third line center will be John Farinacci.
I think he's definitely going to have an underrated opportunity, rather. And I do have a clip from the press conference where Don Sweeney was talking about Elias Lindholm, Zadorov a little bit. I'm going to play this one real quick just to round out the last little bit that we have here, if you don't mind.
Well, Elias got off to a slower start, started really in training camp where he wasn't 100% healthy. Didn't find the continuity with a couple different line mates, but has settled in and done a good job overall of being a bit more of a matchup. It frees up Pavel and David to be a little bit more offensively tilted in zone starts and such. So it's going to show up in your production. It shows up in everybody's when you're in the matchup role and you're getting more defensive zone started. And again, even playing Matty Poitras in that sense. You've got to toggle in terms of where the players are going to play, and Elias has done a good job there. Penalty killing wise is as advertised. Our power play overall hasn't been very effective. It's not just on one man, so ultimately it's on the 5-man units to continue to improve. And you know, he's taken ownership. To his credit, he's taken ownership that he hasn't had the overall year that he'd like to. I think he's had an uptick, you know, in terms of how his play has been, and we expect more. So, you know, it's a mutual disappointment at this point from the standpoint of how he would like to perform. But he's not going to stop trying, improving, and acclimating to.
Do you agree that he's had that quote unquote recent uptick?
Yes.
I think he is starting to settle in. I think he's starting to, you know, I think he has been settling in. We've had that conversation a couple times when it comes to him and Zadorov, as far as the coaching shifting, the cross country moves, and all that stuff. And I think these last, what is it, roughly 25 games they've got? Is that roughly how much they got left?
Yeah, 24, something like that. I'm not counting.
20 plus games will go a long way to helping him settle in for next year.
Yeah, the only worry I have for him is, and look, I've said it a million times, 3 teams, 4 coaches, 4 systems in under a year. Now you can add Team Sweden to that. 4 teams, 5 coaches, 5 systems in under a year. A new coach comes in and changes everything in Boston, and now he's readjusting again.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that he was injured during training camp to get acclimated, because getting acclimated in general, if you can get in, get to work, get to your job, get the flow of things going, it at least is helpful. He wasn't even able to do that right because
Yeah.
of the injury. So Michael has a question from a little while ago. He asks, Kostelic seems to not be hitting as much. Is that all related to recent injuries, or is that the season that the season is long, or is the coach telling him to hold off to maintain better positioning? Thoughts on Mark Kostelic's recent play?
I think it's injury related, or was injury related. He tried to get into a scrap last night. Who was that with? I forget now.
I mean, there were a few.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just don't think he's at 100%. I can see it in his skating. I can see it in his physicality. Now it's, he's going to be back next season. Just signed a new contract. Just coast through the season. Hope nothing serious happens to you now, and get the season over with.
Yeah, the last thing that you want to do is have the guys that who are going to be here next year, or who are above 60% likely to be here next year. Pasternak, Kostelic, Lindholm, Brad Marchand to a degree, that you just don't want those guys to get an injury so severe that they're going to miss the start of next year. You want to come into next year healthy. McAvoy and Lindholm, I think you're ready to shut them down. I'm encouraged by the fact that you can see Zadorov and Lohrei both get a workload that's much more. It'll be beneficial to their development.
Well, yeah, that I'm just interested to see how look, you can crap on Sweeney all you want. But between him and Evan Gold, they're pretty smart. Throw Jamie Lang and Bruner in there as well. They've got a whole pile of money in front of them to use if they so want to. If they can lure a team to overpay, they can utilize that money. It's not costing Jeremy Jacobs money out of his pocket, because both the Lindholm and McAvoy contracts are insured. So he's not paying for it. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, and you mentioned having a whole pile of money. They're going to have a whole pile of cap space to work with going into next season as well. So, calling other teams isn't just about making a trade for this deadline. As he alluded to in the press conference, he said, something may come to fruition at the draft, or something.
Planting the seeds, which is what I said which is what I said on this very show 2 weeks ago, that all the GMs are going to be all in one place. And if they don't work out something for now, they're planting the seed for the off season.
Yeah,
I'm telling you, folks, this is the place to be, because you'll hear it here 2 weeks before Don Sweeney says it.
At a minimum 2 weeks before. A minimum of 2 weeks before. So, let's see. Matrix says that Bruins defense is set for next season. Sweeney needs to seriously focus on getting this team faster and a lot more offensively talented. That should be the main priority in the offseason, possibly trade deadline. Do you think this team's defense is set for next season? Are you confident in that statement? I know you have some guys signed with term, but do you think this defense is set for next season?
Once they get Lowry signed, and if Lindholm and McAvoy are healthy,
I wonder, in the sense of at that point you have peak third line right D, fine. Wotherspoon is unsigned for next season, and Callahan is currently unsigned for next season. So what, are you going to go in with a third pair of Osterley and Peak? Because right now that's what you got under contract.
I said once Lowry is signed. So you have Zadorov, Lindholm, and Lowry on the left, and you've got McAvoy, Carlo, and Peak on the right.
But are you comfortable with Osterley
Yes.
being your seventh defenseman?
Why not? He's a seventh defenseman.
Okay.
Seventh defenseman doesn't play every. It's not college hockey where you dress seven defensemen.
Right. Apparently not well for some teams. My question is beyond that. How's your depth look? So that's I can see them looking to build their depth. Their depth on D right now is, not great as we're seeing it be tested. But I think the back half of this year, you might see a guy like an Ian Mitchell get a call up at some point, or, honestly, would you call up someone who's a little younger to give them some time in the NHL to see what it's like?
No.
You don't think that would benefit any of them?
Who do you have in mind?
I'm just curious to see if you would think that would help their development in any way. Okay.
No. If
Not
anything,
one
it would.
specific.
If anything, it'd be worse for them.
We were also asked, besides the players, who coaches this team next year? Sacco isn't a head coach. Time for a whole new group. Thoughts on the coaching staff? And I see a few other comments in there about the coaching staff as well.
When it comes to coaching staff, I don't know. We have to see who's available. There's nobody available right now. I can tell you it's not Joel Quenneville.
Yeah. I don't know who's. I mean, we talked about it. Someone asked about it. I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago. Someone asked about Mike Sullivan. He had a lot of good things to say about the city while he was here for the Four Nations tournament. Do you think he wants to come back at all?
No. I don't think so.
Because it wasn't this regime that was the one that let him go. So you don't think there could be a mended bridge there in any way?
I don't know. I don't. Right now, Mike Sullivan is not available. And as far as I know, he's still under contract with the Pittsburgh Penguins.
And it's a good contract, too.
So, why are we dealing in hypotheticals? Let's wait and see who's available. Because there's going to be coaches become available that you never thought would be.
Yeah, I mean, really, who thought Joel Quenneville was going to leave Florida when he did?
Yeah.
Well, based on what happened, things happened. So, Bear Force says, we know Dom would love Dale Hunter as coach.
Of course I would. By next weekend, he should be going for his 1,000th win as an OHL coach.
Wow. Good for him. Real quick, he says, why not? Quenneville, time to give him a second chance. Boston's not going to be the team to do that. We've had that.
After what happened with Mitchell Miller, and then bringing in What's her name?
I don't
To
know. It was
do-
a third-party investigative thing
Yeah.
to sort that whole thing out.
They're not bringing in Joel Quenneville. I guarantee you.
They've done the Google search on Quinville.
Yeah.
So that's just not whether he deserves a second chance or not. That's a whole different conversation. It won't be Boston who gives it to him. Case in point. Mark Savard is with Toronto right now. Good luck talking him out of that contract for now.
He's close to home. He lived like home for him, I believe, is Peterborough, Ontario. Why would he want to leave?
Yeah, unless he's getting a promotion from assistant coach, but
He wanted jobs in Boston. Where the last I talked to him, was before the Calgary job, I believe, or maybe right after it. No, it was after it. Before the Toronto job, he said to me, his exact words were, "Dom, I'm not asking them again."
I was
So
going to say, I feel like they've missed their opportunity on him.
now he's asked them to come back, and they've turned him down. Said, "We don't have a position for you at this time."
That's what I mean. I feel like they've missed the boat on him. Maybe in the future there's a match there, but not at this time. Let's see. They need someone outside the organization with all new assistants except goalie Bob. That's a sentiment I've seen a couple times in here. Again, it comes down to, like Dom said, who's available. Right now, if no one is available, you're going to want to stay with who you got. Michael asks, is David Quinn an intriguing name?
Not for me.
Yeah, I don't see it. I feel like they could have made that move already, and they chose not to. Sean asked earlier, sorry if this is asked a lot, but not this offseason, but the next. Jack Eichel is a UFA. What do we think about the potential of Eichel coming home to Boston? Top line center issue fixed right there. Sean, ask that question in 2 years. That's what we think about it. Let him get to unrestricted free agency before you can worry about it.
Yeah, I doubt Vegas lets him get to UFA. And we, without trying to sound condescending, but I hear this about Boston area players from Boston fans that live in Boston all the time. Noah Hannafin, Jack Eichel. You go down the list.
Oh, yeah.
It's like they all want to come home, but they never do.
Yeah.
Hannafin, as soon as he was traded, bam, re-ups.
Yeah. And the thing is Vegas has no reason to move off of Jack Eichel.
Nope, none whatsoever.
When he is up, he'll be 30 years old. They're not just going to dump him because he's a 30-year-old center.
No, Jack Eichel can play at a high level, probably till 36, 37, maybe 38.
Jack Eichel is the face of their franchise. Like, he is, to them, essentially close to what Patrice Bergeron was to us. They had to trade for him because when Jack Eichel's career started, the team didn't exist, but he gets one more contract, and that's who he is to them.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason why they would move off of him for any reason, unless it's a massive, massive overpay, or they don't think a deal can get done. But that's not going to happen until next year.
And by then, the cap's up to $105 million.
Yeah. Would you consider Tocchet if he doesn't extend with Vancouver?
Yes, I believe I mentioned him last week.
It was either last week or the week before. Yeah, we had conversations about him. And then David asks thoughts on Chychrun. I think he's a good player. I don't see a match in Boston at this point. Again, another guy that they missed the boat on.
With Zadorov, Lindholm, and hopefully Lorei under contract, where does he fit?
He doesn't.
You know,
Unless you, and I'm not saying they should, unless you move off of Mason Lohrei, someone like Jacob Chychrun doesn't make sense. And even then, I'll take Lohrei
I wouldn't. But
over.
still,
I mean,
besides the point.
yeah, I know, David, he's a UFA this summer, but again, you have Mason Lohrei, who's a restricted free agent. You don't have to overpay for him. And, let's see what he looks like over the next 20 some odd games. Because if you can would you give Mason Lohrei 25 minutes a night the next few weeks?
I don't know, Chris.
Would you try?
No. Like I'm not purposely trying to give any player a set amount of ice time. 25 minutes, he's never done it.
I thought he has a couple times.
In college.
Oh, maybe that's what I'm thinking of. I don't know. I'm just saying I feel like Mason Lohrei should be one of your top minute eaters on your left side as much as you can get him. Would you try him on the penalty kill at all? Try and round out a little more of his game that way?
I don't know. I'm not an NHL coach.
I'm just getting your thoughts.
But Chris, to be able to answer that question, I have to know what he's being taught at practice and whether he's getting it.
Fair enough.
Are they even trying to teach him penalty killing? Or are they, and he's just not getting it, therefore he's not getting PK time? I don't know. I don't know the answers to those.
Fair enough. Michael wants to know, what are your thoughts on Judd as an announcer?
I've got no opinion. Most
As
of
I
the
say,
games I watch aren't on Nesson.
I was going to say, are you even getting that feed at all? So
I choose not to watch it. I've said many a times, whenever possible, I try and get the other team's play-by-play because they're less biased.
I mean, I only have the option for the Nesson feed. I think he's doing just fine. It's going to be a tough transition for anybody to take over from a legend. Rene Rancourt to Todd Angeli, Judd from Jack Edwards. When you have someone who's been doing something that becomes a legend like that, it's going to take some time getting used to. So, and some people are going to like him, some people aren't. I see in the comments, Bear Force says that he's not a fan of Judd Surratt. Okay. Is he calling the game? Is he accurate? Yes. Is he doing fine? Yes. If he sucked at the job, he won't be back. So, let's see.
I know that Jacob Chychrun right now is a better defenseman than Mason Lohrei. I don't believe that you believe you have to tell me this, but I am also very high on Mason Lohrei's projection. People may not see it, but it's there.
I was going to say, I'm sure you see all these comments coming in about Jacob Chychrun over Mason Lohrei.
Hold on a second.
So Chychrun right now is 26. Let me go back to...
I've been watching Jacob Chychrun for longer than most people even knew who he was.
And Mason Lohrei is 24. Look, yes, as he said, Jacob Chychrun right now is a better defenseman.
I know if Kevin's still there, he wants that jersey.
In 3 years, let's revisit the conversation. Hey, we do have Court in the chat. You had mentioned something about Court earlier. I don't know if he was watching at the time.
Oh yeah, I told him a few weeks ago when we were talking about Justin Brazeau. I said, just watch how many times the guy falls down.
Oh, that's what it was. Yeah, it was the Brazeau conversation. So, Matrix says back here, only way I trade Lohrei is if he's involved in a package bringing back an offensively skilled badass for the top 6. And there's Kevin chiming in, wanting that jersey. So, I mean,
Oh, well.
I'm with Matrix here in the sense that, Mason Lohrei isn't untouchable, but I mean, I don't see someone becoming available that I would be willing to package Lohrei in a deal right now.
No.
Court Rizzo is Bambi. Learning to walk, absolutely.
For such a big guy, very weak on his skates.
So, the press conference, the biggest takeaway, what was your biggest takeaway for this team going forward?
Well,
Reading between the lines of what Don Sweeney says by not saying things.
I haven't watched Court's video of it yet today. I'm pretty sure he made one. So I'm curious to see if we agree. My biggest takeaway is I can't believe how many people have said that Don Sweeney had nothing to say. It was all crap.
The biggest thing that I'm seeing is the crowd, the Fire Don Sweeney crowd is loud and proud again. I'd be curious to see how many of them agree with the sentiment that he didn't say anything. Just because I think he said a lot without saying much. Let's see. He says he did. So I'm checking real quick to see if his video is up here. I would definitely check it out on Bruins Diehards on YouTube as well. Give us a follow while you're over there. Court, I'll watch yours after we are done with the show. But yeah, I truly think he said quite a bit. I think he got as close to admitting. I don't want to say that the team is packing it in for this year because they are still in a playoff race, but we're, basically shutting down McAvoy until he's ready to go. We're shutting down Lindholm until he's ready to go. We're going to give young players an opportunity to step up. And if they can carry us to a playoff run, great. If they can't, well, it is what it is. Soft sell for unrestricted free agents. And, if there's somebody that they come calling on that makes a bigger trade possible, fine. They're going to make some phone calls to try and plant some seeds for those larger deals, though, and try and pull something off at the draft.
Look, he not basically said, he come out and said it. He's not re-signing any of the UFAs except Brad Marchand. Unless he gets a phone call where things can change quite easily. In other words, he's made his final offers. They've been rejected. So now he's going to seek opportunities to move them.
Yeah. And as Court said, he used the word futures, which is huge for him.
Yeah,
absolutely.
He repeatedly used the word futures.
Right. And I know a lot of people, like I said, are back on that Fire Don Sweeney train. Michael is not. It sounds like he says Don Sweeney is a really good GM. Not sure how fans see it otherwise. Well, Michael, 2015, that's how they see it otherwise. They have one thing from 10 years ago stuck in their head, and they fail to see the much larger picture.
And what people fail to realize when they keep bringing up 2015 or any draft year after that, Don Sweeney does not make the picks. His scouting department does. That's what he pays them for. If Don Sweeney did it all by himself, he wouldn't need scouts. Why has the drafting improved? Because he's revamped the scouting department.
Yeah. I think you can see that progression. What we've also seen is we've seen him take Providence and turn it into what it should be, a farming system, developmental to the next step. He's going to probably continue that work down to Maine, making the ECHL a developmental farm system into the American Hockey League. He's gone out and he's gotten NCAA players to fulfill roles that weren't drafted. And so that's also only going to continue to get better. So Is he perfect? No. I think you just had the comment up here. Michael also said Sweeney did a great job in setting up the 2015 offseason last time. We were in a spot for a retool. Unfortunately, drafting didn't pan out, but he moved Lucic and Hamilton for great picks.
And people
Let me
don't
ask-
realize how close he was to moving Tuukka Rask at that very same draft.
Yeah. That's why he went out and he got Martin Jones. Because the next move was to move Tuukka Rask, and then opted not to. He flipped Jones, and and I know we've had that conversation about the 2015 draft on numerous occasions, but I mean, really, what? One of the players was a reach. Other two were kind of drafted
Well,
fair.
I don't want to rehash
So
it. People have made up their minds. You're not going to be able to change your minds.
right, and
It's like, how many times have I screamed, Don Sweeney does not make the draft picks? Yet, everybody says Don Sweeney can't draft. That's not him.
right, and I mean, you also walked away with Brandon Carlo from that draft. So
Look, in whatever year it was, where they drafted Urho Vakanainen, they were ready to pick Robert Thomas. He was their next player on their board. That's what the scouting department had decided. But one scout who has a lot of pull with the Boston Bruins, even before Don Sweeney became GM, was pounding the table for Urho Vakanainen. And because he was that well respected, Sweeney went with him.
yeah, I mean, I'd love to have Robert Thomas on this team, but at the same time, Vakanainen was then flipped to get you Lindholm, and he's also played over 150 games in the NHL already. So,
Yeah, but if it wasn't Vakanainen flipped to get Lindholm, it would have been somebody else.
somebody
Chris.
else.
You can't say Vakanainen was used to get Lindholm, because Vakanainen was a throw-in in that deal.
David says, how would you rate 1 being poor, 10 being perfect Sweeney's handling of the Cassidy situation? That should be a good one.
Who's asking
David
that?
is.
David, I can tell you that that Sweeney handled it perfectly, and that Cam Neely handled it poorly.
I was going to say, yeah, my answer is that Sweeney handled it the way he should have. It wasn't his call. He wanted Cassidy back. He was overruled.
Sweeney came out in public and said he was coming
That's what I mean.
back.
He was overruled. It is what it is. At least he went to Cassidy and told him in person, instead of, chicken shitting out of it and just dealing with it some other way. Bearforce says, Dom, do you know what they would have got for Rask back in 2015?
I probably have it written down someplace in one of those filing cabinets. I don't know off the top of
It would
my
definitely
head.
be interesting.
I can tell you this. They had traded Hamilton. They had traded Lucic. Elliot Friedman was on at the draft spewing something about the Bruins being done. And then a very good friend of mine at the draft was texting me at the very same time that I was texting him, saying Tuukka Rask is next. That was my message to him and his message to me, which came simultaneously, thousands of miles apart. Different sources.
And then the deal got squashed. So
they didn't pull off the deal because they were already getting a lot of backlash from trading Lucic and Hamilton. And they figured that trading Rask would be an absolute PR nightmare if they had done it at the draft.
And turns out that quashing that deal was a good call. So, although we never would have known what the alternate would have been. So, this comment says it's funny Sinden was GM and never won a cup as GM in his 30-plus years, but Sweeney needs to be shot at Don for not winning in 10 years. If they win in 2019, this isn't a topic at all. Agree or disagree?
Probably not. Look, 2 years ago, he set up a team probably better than any other team ever set up to go on a cup run and win the cup, with maybe the exception of the 1971 Bruins. That wasn't on Sweeney. If the players had got, I don't know, their heads out of their asses in 19, and Montgomery had made some different choices 2 years ago, we probably have 2 cups.
Yeah, as Michael points out, 2019, that's on the players, not the GM, as is 2023. So, I mean, he's got you to 2 Stanley Cups. He's built the
That's 2 cups that were robbed from.
and he's built the best team on paper in the history of the game. And oh, by the way, let's not forget 2020 was a wagon of a team, and then COVID hit. So that could have been another cup run that you were realistically looking at. So he does a damn good job. So Kendall says, I've been a big Sweeney supporter. I still am, but you rarely see a coach get to fire and hire this many coaches, a GM, I think he means. If your GM is doing a good job, do you think the number of coaches they hire and fire really matter?
No.
I think
No.
a good GM has a pulse on the team and knows when it's no longer that coach is, getting the most out of his team. And that's something that you saw this year when it came to Jim Montgomery. At the time, no one was available. So you elevate from within, see what you have in a guy like Joe Sacco, who's been with the franchise for over a decade, and you reevaluate in the offseason.
Court, what was the question? I will say this. Cassidy's firing had nothing to do with Don Sweeney. Montgomery's firing had all to do with Don Sweeney. And the fact of the matter is, whether anybody wants to believe it or not, is this team was ill prepared coming out of training camp. Remember on this show a few months ago, I had talked to another coach and said, what do you see that's wrong with this Bruins team? And the number one thing was conditioning. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that, and whether anybody admits it or not, Montgomery had lost the room.
Yeah, 100%. I think we all agreed on that at the time. So,
I only credit one firing to Sweeney, and that's the Montgomery firing. And I'm glad that I, for one, have been very vocal. Should have happened a year ago.
Yeah.
Should have happened in 23 when that team should have went on a deep run, if not win the Stanley Cup. That was all coaching.
100%. We've had that conversation before. Shaz chimes in and says, I will be shocked if we see any player from the American Hockey League other than the players we've already seen. I think Farinacci's playing his way up to get a look. I really do. I think he's going to be someone that, some of these players aren't going to get their call up until after the trade deadline because, to your point, they want them to be eligible for the Calder Cup playoffs. So, as long as you don't need the body, in which case, even if you do, if you can do it on an emergency recall, then you do. Let's see. with Hampus out and possibly Charlie, could the Bruins have extra cap room to pick up players? Guessing yes, but no players or assets to trade. Would you broker a deal with extra cap space that you have?
Absolutely. I would. Like, and like I said, the Lindholm and McAvoy contracts are insured, so it's not money out of pocket for Jeremy Jacobs. However, like I said at the beginning, I am not using Lindholm's LTIR just in case some reason McAvoy doesn't go on LTIR to broker a deal. I am using that space as needed to bring the kids up from Providence because, like I said, you have to know what you have in Fabian Lysell and Georgian Merkulov to before you go into the offseason and hit free agency. I also want to get a look at John Farinacci. I also want to get a look at Brandon Bussey and Michael DiPietro, which would then at least open the door for me to have conversations about moving Jonas Corposalo in the summertime. Other than that, I'm in no hurry to bring anybody else up. I really am not.
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be certain guys that don't require an opportunity to get a look either. So, let's see. Michael says they need to hire a culture coach. Julian was a culture coach, had a strong vision, commanded respect. Any comments on the coaching style between Julian, Montgomery, Cassidy?
Not really.
I do agree with this. Bear Force says this team will look very different next season, both on the ice and behind the bench. Michael wants to know, could the Bruins claim Valimaki? I guess he was just waived by the Utah Hockey Club. I know he's coming off of an injury. Left shot defenseman, 26 years of age. Are you really going to the...
Could they? Yes, but why?
I was going to say, are you really looking, like, what's he going to do for you other than the fact that he's under contract for next season, which, so why are you getting him for next year at $2 million? I don't see the purpose in that move. Let's see. Shaz says, I think Montgomery lost the room during the end of the second season. Is there a lot of waiver wire traffic around the deadline? Could Bruins pounce and pick a player up that route? You want to talk a little bit about how the waiver wire could affect the trade deadline? Or vice versa, really?
The waiver wire on trade deadline day is to get players down to the AHL in order that they will be eligible for the AHL playoffs. They have to be on the AHL roster on March 7th by midnight. So they get sent down and then called back up.
And they have to clear the waiver wire too. So
most of those players that go down do not require.
Right. No, I know. I'm just saying the ones that get put on the waiver wire will have to clear. So they'll have to get put on Thursday afternoon to clear for Friday to then be recalled on Saturday, correct?
Right. But no team is claiming them because then you have to do the same thing.
Right. Absolutely. No, I agree. There was one other question that was asked back here, and I'm going to try to find it, but someone was asking about college free agents or college players in general that they could look to sign when the college season is over. I know we had discussed that. Do you I know we've talked about one name in particular out of Colorado College, but I know we're also going to talk a lot more about it tomorrow as well. Do you want to?
Well, no, we're not. I will make my list in a few weeks. But right now, my number one target is Gleb, Gleb Veremyev. V as in Victor, EREMYEV, I believe it is, Russian name. Gleb Veremyev out of Colorado College.
Yeah, he's been lighting it up. Teammate of Ty Gallagher. I think you've got a an in there. There's a couple names I'm going to send your way too that I want to go over, and kind of a couple of them more for this year, but we'll take a look at them and have some of that conversation a little closer to the end of that season. That's our Monday show. Michael asks, is Korpisalo a potential trade candidate? I know we've had that conversation about Korpisalo, offseason move.
In the
I would
offseason.
still think. And then Dave's question, when is public skate at the Garden asking for number 6?
I believe it's at 11 a.m. on March 27th. I don't know.
Look on their website. I mean, I don't know. Do you really see his skating as an issue for Lori?
No.
He's got development to do. He's not a perfect product. We said that coming into the season. Players are constantly developing and getting better. Again, that's something that we discuss heavily on Monday's show, the Prospect Show. So hopefully we see all of you guys there tomorrow. It's right here, same channel on X, on Twitter, on YouTube. Give us a follow, give us a like. You'll know when we go live. Our partners are Ice Shaker for that one as well. So someone wants a little more. Actually, Michael was asking this question. I think he asked it earlier, and I meant to go back to it, Dom. Leading up to the trade deadline, what is the conversation Sweeney has with players with trade clauses, or is that already written out in the start of the season? Can you just explain that to some of the newer folks, kind of how that works? Because I know some of it's based on the contract itself.
Most contracts, and I would say the vast majority of them, well over 90%, when there is a limited no trade clause or a partial no trade clause, it is written into the contract. The teams that the player refuses to be traded to. Remember the whole Ottawa Senators?
Yes, I think it was
Vegas.
Vegas.
Vegas situation that Ottawa didn't transfer that list to Vegas. So Sweeney by now knows where everybody does not want to get traded for. Because like I said, the vast majority are written into the contract. No trade clauses or no movement clauses. Sweeney did it in, I believe it was 2016, went to everybody with full clauses and asked them to submit teams they would be willing to accept a trade to. I don't know that he's done it since, but I'm assuming if there was something in the works, he would approach a player and say, look, such and such team has expressed interest. Before I continue any conversations with them, would you entertain the idea of accepting a trade there?
Yeah, and let's face it, Brad Marchand knows teams are calling on him. He knows that. He knows he's in the driver's seat for that deal, if there is one. So, Shez, I think this is a sentiment that a lot of fans are feeling. Points out what's very frustrating is that they're willing to accept the mistakes in developing Lori, but not their AHL forwards. One, they don't have the depth of defense that they have in the forward group. That, I think, is a huge part of it. And then beyond that, the forward group is a lot less developed than Lori as far as where most of them stand. Because you're seeing a guy like Matthew Poitras get his opportunities. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, you have to watch the games. If you watch the games, you'll know why certain players are getting called up and certain players are not. Like the best defenseman in Providence right now doesn't even have an NHL contract. He's there under an AHL contract.
And we go over the video footage on Monday nights of the prospects. We visit the highlights. We've also taken a look at some of the lowlights too. So, are we going to show you every single mistake they make or every single good play they make? No, but we're gonna touch on them. So, and then Chaz points out, and they continue to keep players like Wallstrom on this roster. I got no answer for you definitive on Wallstrom. I think they're just going to continue to see what he can do. I mean, right now, trying to send him down to Providence requires waivers. So I think he would have hit the chopping block if Lindholm was going to come back. But now there's, a pivot to the plan. Nikki says new front office and whole new coaching staff trades Carlo, Coyle, and Freddie. I don't think so. I don't think Carlo's going anywhere, at least until the offseason. Coyle, same thing. Why are Bruins often outshot? Is it because they don't get into shooting lanes, or are they too picky?
You can't develop that into a player. By the time they reach the NHL, if they haven't done it their whole career, it's not something new that's all of a sudden going to happen.
Yeah, and they often are looking for a perfect shot on the power play. I think we've seen that quite a bit over the last couple of years, overpassing on the power play. I'm not sure, Shaz, which assessment you disagree with. And I'm not sure. I see the comment here where you do watch the games. I get that. I'm not sure what assessment is disagreed with other than the mistakes comment that they mentioned earlier. Dom, you got any theories on why they, would call it, why they're okay with Mason Lohrei learning on the fly versus a Fabian Lysell at this point to where we are right now? Obviously could change going forward.
Because Mason Lohrei can produce.
I mean, the counter argument would be that Fabian Lysell is producing down in Providence.
Well, the argument I would make is no, he's not.
I know people are going off of goals and assists.
What's he producing? He's 21 years old. It's what, his second full AHL season?
Something like that.
He's not a point per game player. He's actually got 29 points in 42 games. Is he a player that's going to outscore his mistakes at the NHL level? No, he's not. But I've also said 100 times now, make it 101, that despite that, I still give him an opportunity.
Yeah.
But Fabian Lysell is not what most fans make him out to be at this point. He's not. Will he get there? We don't know. He's still only 21 years old. But to say that he's producing at the AHL level is just false.
And he's making...
Matthew Poitras is younger than him. Younger. Matthew Poitras played 20 games in the AHL this season and had 21 points. That's producing at the AHL level. Georgi Mikulov has 41 points in 45 games. That's producing. 29 points in 42 games?
That's not lighting it up.
That's not producing for... It's not. It's not even close to lighting it up. It's the American Hockey League.
So, again, to the point of Merkulov is producing, why isn't he up? Again, you also have to look at it from the perspective of and it's the quote right here, is Lohrei outscoring his mistakes?
Yes, he is.
Yeah. And that's why I say Lohrei is more developed than the AHL forwards. Some of them, yes. Now, the point about Georgi Merkulov, right? You have to look at it from a whole organizational standpoint. Coming into this season, right? And I see Shaz's comment here, the amount of minutes they wasted on guys like Tyler Johnson and Wahlstrom instead of seeing what you have in your system is ridiculous. We'll come back to that, but you got to see the whole overall picture. This team was planning on, they were in contention for making a push in the playoffs. So that's why you get a guy like Tyler Johnson. That's why you got a guy like Wahlstrom, because they are NHL players who are a little bit more or a lot more developed than the guys in your system and are capable of helping push a team to the playoffs. They have playoff experience at the NHL level. Wahlstrom himself, not a lot, but he's played 5 games in the playoffs. Georgi Merkulov has none. Fabian Lysell has none. John Farinacci has none. So when you're looking at it from a perspective of trying to compete for the playoffs, that is why those moves were made. What we finally got today from Don Sweeney was the acknowledgement that this year, not going as planned. Yes, they're still fighting for a playoff spot, but now with the Hampus Lindholm injury and the Charlie McAvoy injury, really setting this train off course, they're going to look at other avenues. So now is the time to sit here and say, okay, let's get these guys looks. Let's see what a Georgi Merkulov can do at the NHL level, because we aren't able to make that playoff push. Now, if Merkulov comes up and he performs and helps push you into the playoffs, that's awesome. But that's not the level of expectation that you have right now. Things change. It's in flux. So any final thoughts on that, Dom? I know we're a little after the
Nope.
8 o'clock time frame. So
No, I'm good.
And yes, Chaz, Trent Frederick, Wahlstrom, Coyle, Brazeau, many more. None of them are outscoring their mistakes. That's why we have been saying on the show, Dom, you've said it quite a bit, that this team should start to give these young players more of an opportunity. We've been saying that, but they've been in playoff push mode. So, you know, yeah, as Tyler says, you can't just send them all down to Providence or trade them to make room. You have to do it in a systematic way. You have to have a plan to do it. This is where we're going to start to see that plan. So with that, we will be back tomorrow to go over which prospects should be getting that call up and a lot more. So, Dom, any final thoughts to round out tonight's show? Anything like that?
No, we'll be back tomorrow.
Alrighty, I want to thank the folks over at Ice Shaker. Check them out, iceshaker.com. Great partners over here. Again, you can get your own customized Ice Shaker. Get a Bruins one. Dom, we still got to sort out a giveaway on one. It's been crazy over the last couple of weeks here, but we will sort that out. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in. And last thought I got is go Bees.
Lose bees.